should be investing and putting the money in the primary care
Would you
services.
reverse the cuts on corporation tax?
People know about the ageing population for some time. We've cut the criteria so people can't get community care. We treat our older people at the moment like dogs. It's a disgrace. We shouldn't do that.
But would you reverse it?
Hold on. Inheritance tax.
Would you reverse them?
Rachel Reeves snapped on live TV when Andrew Neil exposed a shocking truth. Labour has betrayed the very people they claim to protect. The WASPI women, already feeling cheated by pension changes, now face another blow. Reeves fumbled to justify cutting winter fuel payments while insisting pensioners would be better off. But the numbers don't add up. Stay tuned as we unravel Labour's web of broken promises and questionable math. Andrew Neil didn't pull any punches as he grilled Rachel Reeves on Labour's stance towards the WASPI women. These women, born in the 1950s, have been fighting for pension justice ever since the government abruptly raised their state pension age from 60 to 66. The change left many facing unexpected financial hardship, with some feeling betrayed by a system they'd paid into their entire working lives. Neil reminded viewers of Labour's previous promises to support the WASPI campaign. He highlighted how Labour politicians, including Reeves herself, had stood shoulder to shoulder with these women, vowing to address their grievances.
The cuts in corporation tax, the cuts in inheritance tax, the cuts in capital gains tax. This is what Jeremy was talking about in Prime Minister's question today. You've given away money that actually, quite frankly, we need to spend. And it's not just about an ageing population. That is phony.
Would you reverse the cut in corporation tax?
But I'm telling you, Andrew, that our priority is
You're not telling me the question.
I'm saying.
But as Neil dug deeper, it became clear that Labour's position had shifted dramatically. The financial impact on these women has been devastating. Many had planned their retirements based on receiving their state pension at 60, only to find themselves struggling to make ends meet for an additional 6 years. One woman's heartbreaking statement captured the sentiment of many. They stole their pension, that contract that they thought they had. It's a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of policy decisions. Neil pressed Reeves on the estimated $10.5 billion cost of fully compensating the WASPI women. He pointedly compared this figure to other government expenditures, questioning Labour's priorities. How could they justify massive tax increases and benefit cuts while seemingly abandoning their commitment to these women? As Neil demanded specific commitments from Reeves, the tension in the studio was palpable. Viewers could see the Labour MP squirming as she tried to reconcile her party's compassionate rhetoric with their current stance. Her struggle to provide clear answers only deepened suspicions about Labour's true intentions. The interview exposed a glaring disconnect between Labour's public image and their actual policy decisions. It raised serious questions about the party's economic credibility and their ability to support vulnerable groups effectively. As Neil wrapped up this segment, it was clear that Labour's promises to the WASPI women had crumbled under scrutiny, leaving viewers wondering what other surprises might be lurking in their economic plans. With Labour's credibility already on shaky ground, Neil turned to their broader economic policies. He had uncovered a paradox at the heart of their plan, one that threatened to undermine everything Labour stood for. How could a party promising to champion workers justify measures that might harm them? Neil began by outlining Labour's ambitious economic promises. The party had pledged to improve public services, invest in green infrastructure, and boost living standards. But as he delved into the projected costs, skepticism crept into his voice. The numbers simply didn't add up. The most glaring contradiction came when Neil confronted Reeves about Labour's plan to raise national insurance contributions by a staggering $25 billion. This revelation sent shockwaves through the studio. How could Labour justify such a massive tax hike when the UK's tax burden was already at a 70-year high? Reeves squirmed in her seat as Neil pressed her on this point. She attempted to argue that employers would bear the brunt of the increase, but Neil wasn't buying it. He cited expert analysis suggesting that workers would ultimately pay the price through lower wages and fewer job opportunities. The Shadow Chancellor's rhetoric about championing the working class suddenly rang hollow. The interview took another dramatic turn when Neil brought up the Office for Budget Responsibility's latest projections. Their forecast painted a grim picture of a smaller UK economy by the end of the decade. This raised serious doubts about Labour's growth plans and their ability to fund their ambitious promises. As Neil questioned Reeves about specific funding sources, the gaps in Labour's economic planning became increasingly apparent. The Institute for Fiscal Studies had warned of a potential $20 billion shortfall in Labour's fiscal plans. Reeves struggled to provide clear answers, leaving viewers to wonder if Labour's entire economic strategy was built on shaky foundations. The tension in the studio reached a fever pitch when Neil confronted Reeves with a stark statistic. The government was expected to borrow $300 billion this year alone to finance its spending. In light of this precarious financial situation, how could Labour possibly justify their extravagant promises? As the interview drew to a close, Neil delivered one final blow. He questioned Labour's controversial decision to cut winter fuel payments, a move that seemed to contradict their pledge to improve living standards. Reeves's attempts to explain this decision only served to highlight the paradoxical nature of Labour's economic policies. Andrew Neil's interview with Rachel Reeves exposed some troubling contradictions in Labour's economic plans. The WASPI women's betrayal, the massive national insurance hike, and the puzzling decision to cut winter fuel payments all paint a picture of a party struggling to reconcile its promises with fiscal reality. These revelations raise serious questions about the potential consequences for different groups in society. Pensioners, already feeling the pinch, might face even tougher times ahead. Workers could see their take-home pay shrink due to increased national insurance contributions, and vulnerable groups like the WASPI women might be left out in the cold entirely. As one economist put it, the credibility of economic policies is crucial for maintaining public trust and ensuring sustainable growth. But after Neil's grilling, Labour's credibility seems to be on shaky ground. Can voters trust a party that seems to change its tune so readily? And how will these contradictions play out in the real world if Labour takes power? The long-term impacts of Labour's proposed policies could lead to increased borrowing and a potential fiscal deficit. This might disproportionately affect pensioners and low-income families, the very people Labour claims to champion. It's a stark reminder that in politics, actions speak louder than words. So, as we look to the future of UK economic policy, we're left with a burning question. Who will truly hold our politicians accountable for their promises and their math?